Good morning and welcome to the third idea forum in a series, Next Movement, co-hosted by the Presser Foundation and the American Composers Forum Philadelphia chapter. My name is Teresa Rogers and I serve as Executive Director of the Presser Foundation. Special thanks to Dustin Hurt, who has provided marketing and technical support to produce the series. This is a webinar version of Zoom, and that just means that participants are not seen, but do have the capability to ask a question and provide a comment in the Q&A window. Dustin and I will be monitoring this window and will do our best to ask questions on behalf of participants. All 5 of these idea forums will be recorded and are being made available for future viewing. We'll be in communications with links to access. Each presentation today will be 25 minutes long with 5 minutes for questions and answers. We hope to wrap up within an hour and a half today at 11:30. The impetus for Next Movement came from so many conversations that I've had with executive directors, artistic directors, development directors over the past 5 months since COVID hit. People shared with me their struggles and their triumphs, and it did not take long to really realize that people were craving interaction with colleagues in the field to uncover best practices, suggestions for technology, ideas for creative programming, and thoughts for the future. I must say, when I took the concern to the trustees of the Presser Foundation, there was immediate interest to support our grantee organizations beyond just grants. And thus Next Movement was formulated. So 26 organizations answered the call for proposals to present, targeting music educators, music performers, music presenters. And we did that hard job of selecting 10 organizations to present at 5 idea forums. This resulted in 2 for music educators, 2 for music performers, and 1 for music presenters. So today's session is the 3rd in a series focused on music performers. When we were reviewing the proposals, we just knew we had to do something around choral music. And we are so grateful to today's presenters, Mendelssohn Chorus of Philadelphia and OperaDelaware, for being open to share their creativity and for working alongside us to develop these presentations today. So without further delay, I'm really pleased to introduce our first presenter, Mendelssohn Chorus of Philadelphia. They have really moved forward with courage and determination during their season of music and virtual programming. They're going to share their 5 goals, and they hope to inspire and propel their community of singers and others forward. So with us from Mendelssohn Chorus of Philadelphia is Flo Gardner and Dominic Diorio.
Here we go. Hey, hi everyone. My name is Flo Gardner and I am the Executive Director of the Mendelssohn Chorus of Philadelphia. And before I introduce you to our new artistic director, I thought I would give you a little bit of context about who we are. So we are celebrating our 147th season, and we are a large symphonic chorus made up primarily of volunteer singers who pay a fee to participate with us. And we also have 12 paid singers that serve as section leaders. Our typical season is about 3 to 4 self-produced concerts and 1 or 2 contracted performances, typically with the Philadelphia Orchestra or singing Harry Potter at the Mann Music Center. And this time last year, we started an artistic director search process. And I looked at my email this morning. We signed a contract. Dominic signed his contract on Friday, March 13th, which that following Monday was when we were on lockdown. So surprise, Dominic had dreamed up this amazing in-person season, and then it quickly came that, nope, that's not going to happen. We really needed to pivot and think really differently about this year. And so when Dominic presented his season to the chorus on July 8th, one of the singers even said, "Is this what hope feels like?" So no pressure, Dominic, no pressure. So I'm so thrilled to introduce all of you and welcome Dominic Diorio, our new artistic director. Take it away, sir.
Thank you so much, Flo, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for the welcome, Teresa and the Presser Foundation and Dustin and ACF Philadelphia. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to share my screen to take you a bit through what we're thinking, because as Flo said, I came in at a time, right? And that time has been filled with such potential for innovative transformation. So here we go. Can you all see the screen? My hope is yes. So
yep,
that's
good.
Excellent, brilliant. So yeah, I technically began on July 1st, but the work didn't start then. Of course, the work of planning a season doesn't begin the day you get hired. It starts the moment you start conceiving of being a part of a new organization. And I was so thrilled, to take part in things that sort of looked like this, as many of our concerts in the past have. You see Water Passion there at the bottom. We are a big choral organization, and that's great, but COVID-19 has presented some particular challenges, since lots of people gathering in inside spaces singing together is not exactly the safest thing to do right now. So the question on everyone's mind, of course, is when can we begin to sing safely in person again? And we went through some restart scenarios, like, okay, what if we could begin in September? And we realized the likelihood of starting to sing in person was not going to happen anytime soon. And so, as Flo alluded to, we had to start to think much more creatively about what a season could look like. To do that, we wanted to center around our core values, right? Things we've articulated as an organization in the past that are important to us, right? Taking artistic risks, right? Having a powerful communal experience that comes from shared music making. Respecting our audiences and their appreciation for what we do, ensuring that we are a long-term cultural resource, and then having an influence on the world of choral music. From these core values, we fashioned 5 goals for the year. Which artistic risks will we take now, and how will we perform? How do we create a community of shared music making at this time when we're separated by screens and distance? How do we involve our Philadelphia-based community supporters in our efforts? What cultural resources will we provide this year for our region? And how do we share our work with the broader choral community, the quote, world of choral music? And so thinking about these led us to realize that we could meet these outcomes in other ways that wouldn't necessarily look like our typical format of 8 rehearsals, concert, 8 rehearsals, concert, right? Which is great, we love doing that, but it's just not possible right now. So this is how we'll sing this year, right? We recognize that our world has changed, that our communities have been shattered by a pandemic of disease, and then another pandemic of global racial reckoning, systemic racism and injustice. And we know that singing is a part of all cultures in our world. And we know that singing also is a part of the rituals of our lives. We sing when we're happy, when we're sad. We sing at funerals and weddings and birthdays. Right? So singing isn't going away, art making isn't going away. And so we needed to find a way this year to do it. And this is how, right? One of the first things we decided we wanted to do was we wanted to commission, right? Because commissioning points to the future, and because our creative artists need work right now, right? And I know one of those composers is here on the call, Andrea Clearfield. Thanks for being here with us today. Fantastic. We have a project with Andrea coming up we're really excited about. I'll talk about it in a moment. And we're also commissioning works from Teksu Kim and Melissa Dunphy. Melissa and Andrea, of course, are here right in Philadelphia. Commissioning points to the future. It says we're not going away. It says we want to still make art. And we knew that that was always central to our vision from Alan Harler on forward, and we did not want that to go away. And we're delighted that we have an NEA grant to help support Andrea's new commissioned work Beyond the Binary, which will be a collaboration with librettist Ellen Frankel and instrument maker David Kontak. And it's around the anniversary of the word robot and Karel Čapek's influential science fiction play. And it's going to touch upon the promises and dangers of technology, right? And we're excited to hopefully premiere that a year from now, plus a few months. And so that's one of them. The other two are works we're commissioning for this year. And originally they were going to be works for in-person premiere, but we're going to try and adapt them to a virtual chorus format, right? And speaking of, one of the things that has been very popular are virtual choirs, right? And we did one this past year as an organization before I came on with our interim artistic director, John Leonard, which was very popular, commissioned by Oleg Yelo, which was then featured at the Chorus America conference this year as well. We're going to do 3 more of these projects this year because it allows us to have a product to show, some performance that we can do. And those videos, while they may not feel like choir when you're making them, right? Recording yourself in isolation, waiting 3 weeks for an engineer to stitch them together. When you do have the experience of hearing the final product, there is something really special that comes out of that. And so the process for us will be an introductory Zoom rehearsal, some tracks created by our section leaders, and then a virtual launch party to share the video with everyone. And this year we're going to do 3 of them, right? One in October will be Moses Hogan's Hold On, music of determination and resilience. In December, it will be the 2 commissioned works by Texu Kim and Melissa Dunphy. And in March, I'm going to write a new work for the choir that uses texts submitted by the chorus members to help create the work, which I'm really excited about as well. We're also going to have some big sings, right, through technology. And we're still working out exactly how these will work, but they will give us a chance to have open communal experiences, even with the latency problems that might exist. And we're going to welcome different artists to help us with that through the season. The first will be with song collector and song maker Maura Smiley, who will share some of her own original work and her folk traditional songs with us in September. And then in December, we're going to welcome 3 of our community conductors, right? Jeffrey Brillhart, Mitu Sandaya Hart, and Rollo Dilworth, to share some of their songs with us in conjunction with me and with the chorus, to sing songs in sort of hope and promise for a better season, right? Looking forward to what our world might be a little later from now, right? Past the virus. In March, we're going to welcome Alicia Lee from Sister Cities Girl Choir. And she and some of the singers from Sister Cities will join us in a Say Her Name Big Sing, which will be centered around inclusion and representation and combating systemic racism and injustice in our communities. I should say as well that Rollo and Alicia are both MCP artists in residence this year, which we're also really excited about. So they will take part in a number of activities throughout our season with our singers. And then at the end of our season in April, we will have Big Sing number 4, which will welcome back our 3 former artistic directors, Alan Harler, Paul Reardon, and John Leonard. We hope maybe that this might actually be able to be in person, outside, maybe socially distanced. But we also imagine that if it can't be, by April, we will probably learned a lot about the technology and figured out the best practices and ways in which we can host these big sings over the course of the season. We'll also be having dialogues with Dominic, right? Which feels a little self-referential as I say it now out loud. But what these will really be are conversations with composers throughout the season, right? And we'll be welcoming in a number of great composers, some of them from Philadelphia, here with the asterisks, Andrea, Rollo, Melissa, and Alicia, and then also some of the others that are associated with our work this year. Andre Thomas, of course, being the guy who wrote the book on the African-American spiritual, right? And Texu Kim as one of our commission composers. And I won't be dialoguing with myself, but we'll be welcoming one of our chorus members, Rachel Armstrong, and a member of our chorus management council to interview me about the work I'm writing for our 3rd virtual project. And you can see there the sort of slate of dialogues. We haven't yet formally announced this season, so you're getting a sneak peek preview today, but it's coming out really soon. Flo and our staff and I have been working on it day and night to get it ready for you. We're also going to have some things just for our members, right? And some of those will be vocal check-in nights. We've heard from our singers that they're worried about their voices maybe not atrophying, but certainly losing shape, if you will, over the course of less singing. And so we're going to welcome our section leaders, our paid members, to give sessions to our singers to help them feel like they're maintaining their vocal health during this time of less regular singing. We're also going to have for our members and our alumni some sing-alongs where we project a score on the screen, play a professional recording through Zoom, and have our singers muted and singing along with it. Not quite the same as in person, but it will give them the chance to sing major works for orchestra in many ways. That is one of the things we really can't do this year, right? And that won't be a public thing, but it will be for our singers internally as a way to still have that connection to and balance with the sort of masterworks of our time. And you can see some of the ones listed there. We'll also have Rollo Dilworth coming as one of the artists in residence to share some of his works with us during that. And we'll link that up with sort of deep dives into those scores. We call them Mendel U, right? And these are chances to get to know in depth about the work. So to learn a little more about the Vaughan Williams Dona Nobis Pacem or the Duruflé Requiem or Handel's Messiah, right? So these will be also coordinated by me and with the help of some of our singers to sort of lead us into a deeper exploration of this music. Of course, you know, that's what we're planning for now, but we recognize that we could potentially be able to pivot if things get better, if situation improves, if a vaccine is suddenly readily available. And as Flo alluded to, I was already planning another season, right? And then we sort of went into season planning part 2 and part 3 and part 4. And so this is what this is what it will look like. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year, maybe sometime in the future, right? These are just little tidbits of programs I was planning. The first one I was hoping to do was Our Story Is Not Over, right? And I was going to welcome in Marietta Simpson, who of course is a dear colleague with me here at Indiana University, but also Philadelphia, well-known mezzo-soprano, and then Elizabeth Scanlon, poet, connected of course to Philadelphia. And you can see there are lots of composers. I love new music. I'm a composer myself, and one of my priorities is to balance the works from our past with the music that's not yet known, right? Both in our greater world and in our community. Thinking about our December concert as well and welcoming in perspectives and viewpoints from people around the world, right? Including gospel singer Diane White Clayton and her music, and the music of Jewish composers Rex Eisenberg and Joshua Fishbein, right? So that we're thinking of the holiday program not as just a Christmas thing that is mostly Christmas and a little bit other things, but as a universal statement of hope and caring and promise. And then we are hoping as well, and we were starting discussions before all of COVID happened with the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia to present the Dona Nobis Pacem of Vaughan Williams. And then also choral orchestral works of Tawny Olshan, Carol Barnett, Melissa Dunphy, and others. So that's sort of the future, right? And these are some of those artists I was just talking about, right? Marietta, Joan Shimko, Elizabeth Scanlon. The question is still, when can we begin to do this in person? Still, everyone's asking this, and still, we don't really know. No one knows, right? All the science that's coming out is coming out daily. The situation changes. So this is what an in-person season would look like a year from now, right? But until then, we have other ways of connecting and joining together, right? My priority this year is not musical excellence or musical performance in the normal way. My priority is community building, community engagement, community connection. I've been meeting with the singers in small groups over the summer, 1/6 of the choir a week for 6 weeks, in groups of 15 to 20. And what I've been learning is that it's not just a chance for me to get to know them, it's also a chance for many of them to get to know each other. You know, a choral organization of 112 voices is a lot of people. And chances are you might know the person next to you, right, in your section, or you might know your friend who's been singing for 2 decades with you, but you probably don't know all 112 people. And so one of the great joys I've had in these conversations with the singers is I'm getting to know them, but they're also getting to better know each other. And as I've said a number of times now to our singer members, you know, I can teach them to prepare for a concert. I can help you sing a chord more in tune. I can help you to sing more healthfully and more relaxed. And I could do that in a rehearsal or 2 or 3, right? But the work of rebuilding a community that has broken, that is years-long work. And so my priority right now is making sure that our community is not just held together, but strengthened, more connected, more known, more welcoming, right? And that's centered as well in the strategic planning process we are working on this year, which is centering diversity, equity, access, and inclusion at the heart of our work. Right? Because we recognize that we are a 147-year-old organization, and that comes with a lot of great things and with some baggage, right? And we need to make sure that we are welcoming, opening, and using the privilege we've acquired over time to amplify voices of those that maybe don't have quite the same opportunities, making sure our stages are places to amplify voices of composers of color, performers of color, especially in a city as Philadelphia is, where it is not a majority white city. So that's what I've got. Thank you, ACF Philadelphia and the Presser Foundation for welcoming Flo and I here today. Flo, do you have anything to add to the end of that?
You still always get me all emotional. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you, Teresa and Dustin, so much.
Great, thanks so much. Just a note to everyone in the watching along at home, you can drop a question if you have any questions either in the chat window or the Q&A period. One question that I got sent through the chat that I'll share, people are curious how you're, I guess, managing with the offset in revenue ticket sales, or if there's ways that you're looking to generate revenue from any of the online programs you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about that. So we just adopted our budget for this year, and it's $100,000 less than a typical year for us. We anticipate making quite a few cuts. We are a lean and mean shop. I'm the only full-time personnel. We intend on closing our physical office when our lease is up this year. So we'll be saving quite a bit of money by not having a physical office. We do anticipate, like I mentioned before, we have, the singers pay fees. And so creating a meaningful musical experience for our singers was really a priority for us, so that they felt like they were engaged throughout the year and were able to still provide us a fee, because that's really one of our only earned income streams this year. We are monetizing our dialogues with Dominic and the Big Sings, which are open to the public, and for a very small amount. I think it's $12 per session, and if you buy a package, it's like $10. So we have no idea. We have no idea what this is going to be like, but we're hoping that it will help offset some of the expenses for this year.
And there'll be a student rate as well, of course, right? So what's really nice is that we're not hemmed in by the geographical barriers that sometimes exist, right? If maybe Tuesday night to hear a concert or Saturday night to hear a concert is not good for you, or maybe the neighborhood it's in is not easily accessible, right? Technically, these panels and Big Sings and dialogues, these could be open to anyone that wants to join, whether you're in Philadelphia or somewhere else. And so we see that as one opportunity to increase the awareness of what we do in the broader community of choral music, because it might not just be someone in Philadelphia that wants to hear Andre Thomas come and talk about his music and about the African-American spiritual, right? It might be someone taking classes in California that's also interested, and they might also be able to sign up. So we, as Flo said, we really have no idea like how this is going to work in terms of who will buy or if they'll sell. We have no clue, but we figured we had to try something, right? Rather than just saying it's not going to work and assuming it won't. And we do believe in the quality of the programs we're putting together, that they will be something that is of value. Attaching a value to that is hard when you've never done it before. So we'll see what $12 and $6 feels like.
Great, thanks for that. Another question coming from online, maybe a clarification question. Are Dominic's sessions with the 15 to 20 singers each week online or in person?
Zoom, lots of Zoom, right? So I've been meeting with them over Zoom, and it's been great. So one of the commitments I made early on is that I wanted to make sure we had a weekly meeting, right? This is really critical. And of course, I am still on the faculty in Bloomington, Indiana. The original plan was for me to fly out every week, right? And come back and fly out longer during concert weeks and longer in December and May. And of course, that's not the reality right now, because everything we're doing is virtual. So I will, of course, stay here in Indiana, but still have weekly Wednesday night meetings. And we also recognize that Zoom fatigue is a thing. People will be spending most of their day on their computers. And so we knew that the normal 2.5-hour rehearsal length was probably not the best thing. So our rehearsal length this year will be 7:30 to 9, occasionally going a little longer if we have a very special panel or guest or something we're preparing. But most of the time, the idea is that prioritizing a weekly gathering space. Even just seeing the singers come into these meetings once out of the 6 weeks, right, in the past month, the expression on their faces when they see some of their friends again in Zoom, the chance that someone who just auditioned can actually meet with 15 people first instead of coming into a 100-person rehearsal. These feelings are real and deep and valid, and seeing the singers experience this sense of connection that they've missed has been incredibly gratifying and sort of unexpected as well, because I knew that meeting with people would be helpful. I knew that it would be necessary. I knew that it would help me to onboard as an artistic director. I did not anticipate the sort of outpouring of support they then offered to each other in these formats. And I anticipate that continuing as we move through the year as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thanks to Flo and you for your presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Teresa, who's going to introduce our next speakers. One sec here. All right.
Thank you so much, Dominic and Flo. We appreciate that. And we'll be bringing Dominic and Flo back in after the next presentation. So if you do have additional questions to ask, you'll have the opportunity to do so. Now on to OperaDelaware. What we loved about their proposal to present was that they focused on what they can do and created opera in the outdoors, including Through Arias and Opera Cart, which offered opera performances during hospital shift changes and at retirement communities. So here with us today is Brendan Cook, who's going to share a presentation and some videos showing what OperaDelaware can do.
Okay, unmuting, getting the video on. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's good to be here, although I'm not quite sure where here is. You know, I've been fortunate enough to give talks in country clubs, Rotary clubs, nightclubs, and knitting circles on behalf of OperaDelaware, but never on Zoom, and never to a group of peers. So please pardon in advance any stage fright that I have, especially after that inspiring presentation by Dominic and Flo. So thank you for that. I have a few goals today. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the past, but I do feel like it's important to set up some context of who we are and sort of the trajectory that we were on, because I think it gives some context to the grief that we were dealing with. And I know we're not unique to that when COVID-19 closed everybody down. But I want to share the good news that we found at this time, because it's so important. So I'd love to share my screen. I'll see if I can get this working here. Y'all can't see my cluttered desktop here. Let's see. All right, seems to be working. So I made this slide back in 2012 when I was applying for this job. And it's no surprise that opera companies are constantly undergoing a little bit of reimagination, right? And my predecessor had guided this company through some reimaginations. The big one was going from a volunteer company to a professional one in the 80s. And you know, all of the other reimaginations have been somewhat financial in nature. I think we're on our third or fourth reimagination. But you know, this one was different because this one was not financial in nature. The biggest pivot that we had in recent years was back in 2016 when we became a festival company. As we were looking at the changing landscape of support and looking at our unique geography, the fact that we are 2 hours from DC and 2 hours from New York, and yet we're in this very small place with a small population. We thought, well, hey, you know, we can bring people to this beautiful region to see opera. So that was one of the things that motivated that change. This slide is here to remind me that I can't see you, so I can't see how any of this is landing, and I need to keep things moving along. So I can't even tell if the joke got a chuckle. This is a tough room. But so the festival model was not our idea, obviously. We copied many others, including Cooperstown, New York, which in a short 6-week period, the Glimmerglass Opera Festival brings more people to Cooperstown than the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we thought, well, hey, if we could use our unique geography to capitalize on that, you know, we'll be all the better for it. And there was a little bit of ready, shoot, aim in our planning, and we subscribed to the theory that if we build it, they will come. Pardon the sounds of the dumpster getting emptied outside. I can't plan for these things. But anyway, in 2016, we shifted to a festival model, and boy, did they come. It really exceeded all of our expectations. We had critics and patrons come from all over the place, and we were able to get some validation of the work that we're able to do in Wilmington. I stand by my theory that this quote by Anne Majette was actually written by my mother, and Anne just signed her name to it. She was so complimentary. But point is, we were feeling really good about the work that we could do. We were feeling really good about putting Wilmington on the map as a destination for arts lovers. And it was great to be able to have conversations with our city leaders about economic impact and all of this stuff. So we followed up with several festival seasons, and the increased sort of visibility allowed us to get a lot of other work done, including major renovations to our facility, some with the help of the Presser Foundation, 5 national radio broadcasts, and things were really going well. We had just established a young artist training program that was going to help us do the hard work of patron development. And last year, we were coming off the highest grossing performance in our company's history. So the trajectory was an exciting one. And to top it all off, we were headed towards our 75th anniversary celebrations. Big, major plans for our largest festival yet, which celebrated the beginnings of opera, the height of romantic opera, and the future of opera, all under the lens of Unfinished. Featured Monteverdi's Coronation of Poppaea, Offenbach's Tales of Hoffmann, and Michael Ching and Dean Anthony's Speed Dating Tonight. So there was really something for everybody. And when the pandemic hit, we were 2 weeks shy of artists arriving to town. And again, that big setup, just to sort of let everybody know what we were dealing with at a staff level. We'd worked so hard to get to this big celebration that was taken from us. We had to cancel. It was less than a week from the first performances of our Young Artist Scenes program. We had to send all of them home, and the world closed, as we all know. With that just came a great deal of grief and confusion, as I'm sure it did for many of the people on this call. I mean, first we were thinking, well, is it just a short postponement? Is it a reschedule? Is it a altogether cancel? And through the whole time, we were most concerned about our artists, because their contracts are written in such a way with force majeure that if they don't perform, we can't pay them. And that was a priority for us to try to do something for them. So we got to work immediately trying to raise some money to pay a portion of those contracts. And I'm thrilled to report that we were able to do that. It's hard work, and it was hard work that was being done without the benefit that we get, that reminder of why we work so hard. We weren't able to gather as a community, and we weren't able to sort of be in touch with the art that we love. So depression definitely set in. Staff was working really hard to stay in touch remotely, but we all know the perils of trying to work when you're also hosting a 2nd grade and 8th grade classroom in your home, and everything was hard. And we were kind of rudderless. And then I have to thank a part-time employee, actually the longest tenured employee with the company, who is our board liaison, who gave us a moment of hope and a toehold when she was approached by one of the area retirement communities who a lot of their patrons weren't comfortable accessing the digital content that we were making available, and asked if we could send an archival DVD of a performance that we have here in this room. We have a casual studio series. And we said, sure, that's the least we can do. This is a project that should have taken in normal times 15 minutes, but everything that could go wrong went wrong with all of the equipment. And it took us a better part of a week to add super titles to this archival video and get it to this community. But the payoff was extraordinary. The number of comments that we got, the gratitude that was expressed by this community for sharing something, it made us sort of start to feel like we have a purpose again. And so then we started to look at what we can do. And I will always be so grateful to Mary for giving us that little tiny thing, because it really did represent a toehold. So in May, when our governor allowed small businesses to do curbside pickup, we emailed the email address that was on the state website asking if we could sell our festival t-shirts to patrons in the parking lot for curbside delivery. 2 staff members both filled out an inquiry. One was told no, the other was told yes. So we went with the one that was told yes, and we had curbside pickup of our festival t-shirts. It was kind of soul crushing in a way to be selling our marketing t-shirts to a festival that wasn't happening. But what we were able to do was to gather several people in our parking lot and have our young artist tenor, Jason Berger, serenade them as we were putting their t-shirts in their trunks. And it was incredibly, incredibly moving to see people who hadn't interacted with live music in months to just be so grateful for that connection that it gives to us. Even my 12-year-old, who you can see there in the rear view mirror, he was not driving, I promise, but we did let him sit there for the concert. Was really moved by hearing a live performance again. So it represented another toehold for us. We said, well, okay, we did this, we did it safely, and it impacted people, and we were able to gather with a small portion of our community, and that's what we do. We're a community. So we had this other toehold, and we said, how could we expand upon that? And that's how Through Arias were born. We're so blessed to have this facility here and to have a parking lot where we can do these things. But when the governor's restrictions started to open up a little bit, I was tickled by something that said that drive-through theaters were allowed again. And to my knowledge, there isn't a drive-through theater in Delaware. So what I found as a curious statement in the governor's announcement actually proved to be the genesis for our next program. And Through Arias was designed to have 4 performances on a night, 15-minute performances at a time, where several cars could pull into our parking lot, stay for a short socially distanced concert, go about their way, and then we bring the next group into the parking lot. Very logistically challenging, surprising. I mean, we're accustomed to putting on festivals that involve hundreds of people, but having to go through all of the details about how do we ensure that we keep people safe, it was a lot of work, but again, it gave us purpose. And we were able to gather with 40, 50 members of our community over 2 nights. And things really started to feel normal again. So here's Julia Laird on our fire escape, serenading 10 cars at a time. We've all become amateur meteorologists at this point because apparently it rains every day in the summer. And so we're all glued to the Doppler radar to figure out how we can dodge raindrops and make these performances happen. But it's been a wild ride. We've even had to sort of, occasionally move the stage so that our artists are protected from the elements. But again, as I said, it really sort of started to feel normal for us to gather with our community. And we started seeing something really remarkable. And that was that we were attracting new patrons as well. This was something we really didn't expect. The goal was to sort of stay in touch with our tried and true supporters and survive. We didn't anticipate being able to reach new people and grow. I love this picture and I wanted to share it because this was actually taken by our photographer on the night after he came to drive through Arias, because he wanted to bring his wife for a date night and wanted to get a picture of the super titles being broadcast to the screen in his Tesla. So because I thought that was cool, I thought I really had to include that in our presentation today. So again, it represented another foothold. We took another step of something where we could keep our performers safe and keep our patrons safe. So where do we go from there? Because there are only so many people we can reach in 15-minute programs. Not to be indelicate, but the nature of the programs, the short nature of the programs, is that we don't want to offer access to restrooms right now. So we were looking at 15-minute programs so people could get in and get out and be home. So the next step for us was using an old can of spray chalk that was for an old marketing initiative, and to set up these socially distanced pods in our parking lot. Some of the audience surveys that we put out said that people really wanted to get out of their cars and stay apart from each other. So we started to look at how that might be possible. And Alfresco Arias was born. We've held 2 of these already, and we have our 3rd scheduled for the end of August. And we keep sort of pushing the envelope a little bit. Program gets a little bit longer. We add some more singers, but again, it's still this 45-minute to an hour format where patrons can drive into one part of our parking lot, and then they are masked between their car and their spot. And then they can, enjoy a beautiful outdoor performance. So here's a little shot of the pods with people in them. And again, feeling more and more normal for us. So it's just really, really incredible for the staff to have purpose and for our community to find ways to gather together again. I mentioned before the surprise of new audiences. I took this picture after one of the performances we had of Alfresco Arias, because the group that you see there was a group of new patrons, and they were the last to leave. When I was driving out of the parking lot at night, they were still there drinking wine and having a great time. And as I was chatting with my wife about this, I was really kind of inspired by the idea that for people that are attending things like this for the first time in these circumstances, there's an extraordinary amount of mental glue, right? They're going to remember this experience. Remember that crazy time that we went to an opera performance during the pandemic. My theory is that these are going to be our most ardent and vocal allies. So I'm very, very optimistic about the work that we've been doing and about the public that is engaging with it. And it's a very nice mix of our tried and true patrons. And, upwards of about 20% of the tickets have gone to people who are new to our system. So that's quite inspiring. And we've been able to offer work to the singers, which is another hugely empowering thing, not just for them, but for the staff. represented yet another toehold. We still had audiences that we were unable to reach. We had a large number of patrons who live in retirement communities that were on lockdown and not allowed to leave their own communities to come to these performances. So we started thinking, what can we do to get, to bring this to them? And that's when Pop-Up Opera was born, or we like to call it the Grubhub of opera, the Aria delivery service. Again, not our idea, totally stolen from Ned Canty at Opera Memphis. But it has been a game changer for us to be able to bring live music, admittedly through a PA speaker, on an equipment trailer out in the elements. But we've been able to present top flight artists to people who might not otherwise hear it. This first picture is taken from our first outing to the Christianacare healthcare system. We went to both campuses in the state and offered short 15-minute programs. At this first one, I do believe there were more video cameras than there were healthcare workers. Not complaining, we got a whole lot of attention for this, and we're grateful for it. But it was a huge victory and very inspiring for us and for the performers. Last week, we were able to be down at Bay Health in Sussex County, Delaware, and I guess the word's getting out because we had, I believe it was over 40 healthcare workers that came outside for the performances. And again, they've been quite inspiring. And again, the other thing we were able to do is go to these communities that can't come to us. We've had several trips to retirement communities, and I just have to share a story about this one at the Country House in North Wilmington. We met a former board member there who was excited to hear the concert. And this gentleman is nearing 90 years old. You would never know it if you go to a performance with him in New York, because try to keep up with him going from the subway to Lincoln Center. A very, very energetic man, deep knowledge and love of opera. So he was very excited to have this short performance. And he shared with me afterwards that he was disappointed that his wife was not able to see the performance because she was in the healthcare unit. And he further confided that he'd only seen her but a handful of times since the pandemic started because they were keeping the parts of the community separated. And I lit up and I said, well, guess what? We are headed to the healthcare unit next. So see if you can make a call and see if they can bring her outside. And that's just what they did. And this gentleman and his wife were able to sit down and enjoy a 20-minute opera concert. I don't believe she had heard live music in several years, and he had only seen her, as I said, several times during the pandemic. So to be able to offer that experience to them made every drop of sweat on that trailer meaningful and powerful, and we couldn't wait to do this again. We were really getting a sense of the importance of just doing something. Again, this is such a fraction of what we would normally produce, but the payoffs have really been huge. This was taken yesterday, and this is our friend Ethel. And we reached out to Ethel a little while ago when we were supposed to be going to another retirement community. We said, hey, we're going here. Can we stop by your driveway and sing you a song? And that community had to keep canceling our performances because of weather. And the grounds were too wet and this and that, all good reasons, but we had to keep canceling on poor Ethel. And so yesterday we just said, you know what, we're gonna go dodge raindrops, we're gonna set up a tent, and we're just gonna bring her a concert in her driveway. And to bring a 94-year-old lover of opera, top flight opera in her driveway, I just don't know what better we can do in these days. So we are starting to look at what we may do when the weather doesn't cooperate. When the fall hits and the weather is cold, we're certainly going to have to move indoors and get into the arena of digital content. We're exploring setting up the Presser Black Box Theater in our building as a streamable stage so that we can do a mix of pre-recorded and live content in a more theatrical setting. But until the weather tells us that we need to do otherwise, we are going to take every toehold we can get and keep bringing these artists out into the community. I know that my time is running very short, so I would love, actually, if Dustin would be willing to share a short video on my behalf that's got a few testimonials from the artists about what it has meant to them to be able to sing live in a safe way and connect with an audience. So I'd love to end my time with a short 2-minute video if Dustin could share it.
And during this pandemic, it kind of feels like the impossible dream sometimes to keep the opera houses going, the singers, our careers going. And this might be my only performance in front of a live audience for the rest of the year. So I want to thank you guys so much for coming out here and supporting us, continuing to support OperaDelaware.
To have the opportunity to share the stage with my fellow performers and sing for a very grateful audience made such a monumental impact on my mental and physical health during the pandemic. It brought me so much joy to be able to share these beautiful arias and stories with people again. I can tell the impact on the audience was so great, and that's truly the reason why I am a performer. It's to share the important operatic stories and timeless music with audiences, whether they're brand new to opera or long-term lovers of the art form. While we as an industry are adapting to include digital content, there's truly something so special and impactful about a live performance.
Being able to perform live during this pandemic is something that I cannot even put a price tag on. It is such a valuable experience to be able to make art for people live in a safe environment and developing new audiences in the process. I feel so fortunate to be an artist that has worked for OperaDelaware and will continue to work for OperaDelaware whenever given the opportunity, and especially right now. So thank you.
For them to allow me the opportunity to sing for audiences during this pandemic has truly given me a sense of purpose, to be able to bring some joy to people, and it's really been uplifting to my soul.
Stop my screen share. Okay, are we back? I think that's it for me. I don't know if there are any questions.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Brendan. Yeah, we have a few questions. First off, I wonder if maybe you can talk about, and maybe feel free to use your perspectives as that's what we're curious about here, but what is unique about being in Delaware, say, versus Philadelphia? You know, what is in your eyes the things that your community has as assets, or things that it needs that are different than, say, from, you know, Philadelphia, which is a larger city?
Sure. Yeah, it's a very, very interesting place, and it's a small state with really an embarrassment of cultural riches. And from our perspective as the opera company, I mean, we have an extraordinary theater in the Grand Opera House that is very similar to many European theaters where the works that we know and love were premiered. So that's a huge asset, as well as our proximity to other places. I mean, a lot of the members of our orchestra and our chorus come from the larger cities. But I think the fact that, you know, we share a parking lot with the Amtrak station is a really interesting opportunity for us. It's very easy for people to get here. And there's, as I said, just an embarrassment of cultural riches for such a small place.
Thank you. And There was a follow-up question about specifically the outside arias, and I guess also the both the drive-in and the alfresco. Were you charging ticket prices, and how did you do ticketing, basically?
Yeah, the things that we do here on site, we do sell tickets to, and we use our normal ticketing platform. They're generally sold as general admission, and then we'll seat people according to their party size. But when the opera cart goes out, that's that I should have mentioned in the presentation. We've been fortunate to secure a few sponsors for these things. So those are meant to go out to the community for free, but they are also available for hire. If you wanted to have a concert in your driveway, we make it very clear that we're willing to do it for pay, and we're also willing to go out for goodwill donations.
Fantastic. And when you're programming for an audience that is like certainly smaller than what you would have in an opera theater, have you thought about programming in a different way, maybe programming lesser known works or more challenging things, or just new ideas?
It's interesting because normally in my role, I would try to curate a program and have a theme, but we are so restricted in terms of what we can rehearse safely that ensembles are pretty much off the table. And being honest, a lot of artists just haven't had the excuses to stay in shape. So we are really leaning on them and saying, hey, what do you have that's in your throat that you can put in front of people today? And so it's I'm almost not involved in the programming. We do try to lean towards well-known and the lighter the better. But I sort of dodged the question, but I'm really not handling the programming. I've gone from executive and artistic director to roadie in a very short period of time. So
certainly understandable. And I think one of the things that we're discovering these days is the creativity that is born out of severe limitations. And I think, makes sense that you're turning the curation over to the singers, and maybe given more time and more lead time, they'll also take the opportunity to find deeper favorites. Great.
I do feel, though, back to your question about programming new and more adventurous works. I mean, we talk about this at the staff level a lot. I think on the other side of this pandemic, it's very possible that our audience is going to be a little more willing to try something off the beaten path. And I mean, they're starved. That I feel like it may open up the palette in terms of what we feel we can present to our audience, which has been a mainly traditional audience. We've been stretching the envelope a little bit, but hope to do that.
To that point, Brendan, I feel both really lucky and really unlucky all at the same time to be coming into a new position now, because at some point everything has to be reinvented. But because of that, there's a sort of generosity that comes from all of your stakeholders, right? Recognizing that, we're all experiencing this. This is a very shared sense of upheaval. And I do feel sort of grateful that any changes I could have proposed in a normal season, right, maybe would have met with resistance. And a lot of that resistance has just sort of fallen away. I'm like, yeah, let's try it. I'm 80 years old and I don't mind trying Zoom. Let's see what that feels like. That's not something that I think would have been as normal were this a regular time, whatever that means. And it's interesting too, because I do think we're going to take some of these things, as you were alluding to, and use them again once we're done, right? I can't imagine that, we're never going to have anything that we learn from this time that we just never use again. I really do think we're in a time of transformative change that will lead to new creative possibility.
Agreed. We've actually had several people in our surveys say, I hope you don't get rid of these programs when we're back in the theater. So, I mean, that's really inspiring. And to your comment on generosity, I mean, artists are by nature generous people, right, by what they do. But we're finding, I never would have dreamed of asking some of these artists to sing on a fire escape or a trailer, because in our industry, I mean, those have generally been young artist assignments or for, artists that are developing. But what a wonderful opportunity to put, Metropolitan Opera caliber artists in front of people who are hearing live opera for the first time. Like, that might not have been possible, were it not for this craziness that we're living through. So there is good happening, and it's hard to find it, but it's exciting when you can. I have a theory that you can't have more than one good day in a row during the pandemic. If you have a good day, brace yourself, because the next day is going to be really tough.
Yeah, I wanted to throw a couple more questions that I think open to either organization. I'm curious, I mean, it seems like you're both really interested in continuing, a number of these programs, in the future. I'm curious if something about this, like the pandemic and the sort of the necessity to innovate in particular in concert formats, is there something that we can learn from that and then maybe kind of revisit that as an idea, outside like a global pandemic, a way we can constantly reevaluate the way in which audiences are experiencing music?
It's a big question. I'll just say from our perspective, I mean, this has all been motivated by when something's your only option, it's your best option. But I think that need for constant, reimagination is huge. And yeah, I hope we can continue to look at every little thing and not just be complacent with, well, that worked, let's do it again. But that worked, how do we make it a little bit better, right?
Yeah, and to your point about necessity as the mother of invention, right? Artists are by nature creative, right? Our instinct, our being is to make something, right? I often think about what composers do, right? Because composers give us a recipe, right? And they say, cook, use this and see what you make. And I love that, right? One of the reasons that I love being a composer, one of the reasons I love working with composers is because everyone interprets these recipes a little differently, right? And right now we've been given, a new kitchen and we have all of our old recipes, but we're trying to make the recipes in a totally new environment. And this is what I find so fascinating, because we're going to have a new cuisine. We're going to have new dishes. We're going to have recipes we had that we've adapted now for this new scenario. And at the risk of beating this analogy entirely to death, we're going to have some good meals that come out of this. And like always, we'll have a couple questionable ones too, right? And I think that kind of air of experimentation, this willingness to improvise and to see what comes out of it is going to lead, as Jeffrey in his question posed, to some things that stay with us. I don't think I can anticipate yet now what they will be, because we're still at the nascent part of all of this. But I look forward to seeing what we get to taste, so to speak.
If I can beat your analogy to a pulp, it does sort of feel like vacation house cooking, where you've got to cook for 12 and you have a rusty pot and a burnt spatula and you got to do Thanksgiving dinner for 12. But it's you do the best you can with what you have, and if you have good ingredients, which we do, it's bound to taste good, right?
Yes, not the 3-year-old dried parsley that's been in the cupboard for 3 seasons. Flo, did you want to add in anything about the sort of technology and how we're looking to use Zoom in different ways? Because I know that's been a big part of our thinking as well.
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, I think the thing is we're just trying everything we can and just seeing what works and what doesn't work. I mean, like Dominic mentioned, our chorus, there is a lot of a wide variety of people that are comfortable using technology. And so we've really had to take a step back and create opportunities for them to learn. And we've assigned people, we've asked people to volunteer to help. And we had like 40 people say, I'll help, I'm willing to help other people that don't have technology or the right types of technology to be able to have a better experience. Because that's, as you know, it's like one of the most frustrating things is to be all ready and then all of a sudden you get stuck up on technology issues. So we're just gonna wing it in some ways and allow a lot of room for error and correction as we go along.
And one of the great things about leading a community choral organization is that there are so many people in the room already with such a wide range of expertises. We have IT professionals, and we have lawyers, and we have healthcare workers, and we have mental health specialists, right, in our chorus already. And so in many ways, we're activating these specialties in ways we never had before, asking people to contribute things that they already have in their back pocket, so to speak, and offer it to our enterprise. And that's really humbling and amazing to see, right? And of course, we also have our professional singers as part of our work. One of them is here today. Gina Zhang is in the chat. Hi, Gina. Good to see you. And you know, we've also asked our section leaders to think beyond the sort of usual purpose of the role, which is to come in and sing the right note at the right time for the chorus, right? And to think instead, like, what is the community role of our paid members of the chorus, right? How do they contribute to the community in really meaningful ways that are distinct to their role, right? And how do they contribute in ways that are true to all of the singers? One of the things we did this year as I came in that was really important to me is we changed the terminology, right? So previously our paid singers were called core singers. And I'm really sensitive to language. And I thought that this sort of sent the subtle message that the other singers, right, the 100 or so volunteer singers, are not core to the work of the ensemble, which isn't, of course, true at all. Many of them are the very heart of the ensemble, having sung for decades. So we made a change in consultation with the board and with the singers as well to come up with terminology that sort of felt authentic to what the role was, while also recognizing the value of all of the singers in the organization. This is just one example of a small change that seems so subtle and so simple in many ways, but can have long and lasting impacts. Another one as well is we examined our audition form and made sure we had gender neutral pronouns available for people to identify themselves, right? Small, subtle ways that have a huge impact on a culture of welcome and an environment of inclusion that is important to me personally, and I think is natural, a natural outcome of what's happening in our world today.
I'm curious, maybe switching a little bit of directions, but both your organizations are not exclusively limited, but are heavily anchored in a geographic area and a local community. On the other hand, the amount of online stuff that's happening right now, not necessarily what's happening with the programs that you're doing, Brendan, but with the opportunity and something that you'll certainly, I imagine, turn to in the colder months in OperaDelaware. I'm curious if you're thinking about your organizations in relationship to the wider international community. I run a presenting organization, and one of the things that's really changed is we used to, in some sense, compete for audience with, you know, Philadelphia, and we had kind of a niche audience, but now our audience is worldwide, but we're also in some sense competing with a worldwide range of organizations for the attention. So I'm curious if you have been thinking about the pros and cons of all of a sudden not necessarily being a Delaware organization or a Philadelphian organization, but one that is playing in a worldwide sandbox.
I mean, for us, it's interesting because we are OperaDelaware, but our DNA, I mean, we don't get out of Newcastle County, Delaware often. We changed the name from the Wilmington Opera Society to OperaDelaware in the 80s, but we haven't acted like it. And so even in the non-digital world, in the physical world, I mean, some of the photos that I shared, I mean, we've been all up and down the state on that trailer. So we're able to be in more places in our state, which is great. But to answer your question, I do think that there will be some opportunity for us. We have a few things that we've presented over the past few years that are curious in nature, that people traveled to Delaware to see. We had the East Coast premiere of a lost setting of Hamlet that was written by a contemporary of Verdi. Lots of people came here to see it. I think there's still a great deal of interest in it. So if we're able to work out the details with our union to be able to share that, I do think it could put us at a, in front of a much larger national and international audience. So yeah, I'm certainly excited about those opportunities.
I would add as well, it's interesting being an organization that's 147 years old and coming in as the new guy, right, in my case, because you get to look at what the organization has done to build that rich history. You know, thinking of things like Julie Wolfe's Anthracite Fields, right, in 2015 that we commissioned and won the Pulitzer Prize, right? You can point to that as something that is global, as sort of reaching beyond the sort of geographical limitations of where we are. At the same time, you have to also look and think, are we really as connected to the Philadelphia community as we should be? Do we look like the Philadelphia community as a community choral organization, right? Not usually, right? We tend to be overwhelmingly white, which is something we're aware of, and thinking, how do we make steps to address this demographically? How do we make sure that we do have a culture of welcome and inclusion? So, you know, it's interesting going back to food for a moment, because I just love food. When we think of farm to table, or when we think of homegrown or local, right? These are all great things in the sort of cuisine food industry. And we often, in music, we tend to prioritize those things that give us first a national view, right? An NEA grant, right? A major award or a prize or a recognition at the national or international level. And those things are important, but you also need the roots in your community. And I find, you know, that you can't be focused on just one, right? You also have to think, like, what are we doing as a community organization, and especially one that for us is made up of volunteer amateur singers, right? How do we make sure that we are meeting our responsibility to serve our community? And I think, excuse me, we're looking at that now and thinking, okay, what new programs can we offer? What new ways of reaching out can we try? And it's interesting because with technology, right, some of those geographical barriers fall down. Like, for instance, if you many of our concerts are in churches, right? Because that's a place that it tends to be obvious for singers to have a nice acoustic where they can sing, but many people see a barrier to entry at a church, right? And that's something that is something to consider, right? That you may not have the same issue with in a concert hall, or you may have different issues with in a concert hall, and those might be related to cost or price in different ways, right? So all of these are interwoven. And I think part of our strategic planning process this year for our singers and for our board and our other stakeholders is to ask, what does it mean to be a chorus in community? What does it mean to be a chorus in community here in Philadelphia? What does it mean to be a chorus in a larger global choral community? And I don't think we have those answers yet, but I think we're going to discover a lot of maybe discomfort and discomfort that leads us to change that will help us to renew our mission, our values, and our vision for the organization.
Fantastic. That sounds like a great place to wrap up for today. I want to thank all of the panelists today, and thanks for your time. Thanks for your thoughtful presentations and all the fantastic work you're doing in face of some unprecedented times, as they keep saying. I'm going to turn it back over to Teresa, who's going to wrap things up for us. And thanks for being here. Bye.
Yeah, certainly echoing Dustin's comments. Thank you so much to our presenters today. I'm certainly inspired and energized by everything that both of your organizations are doing. I thought I would take this opportunity to just quickly share some news on behalf of the Presser Foundation related to our Special Projects Grant Making Program. And that is that two things, two changes. One very important change is that we've moved up the date that our special projects application is due. It was due on October 15th. It's now due on September 15th. You might be curious why we made that change. Well, it just means that we're able to get much needed grant funds into the hands of grantee organizations about 2 months faster. And we just thought having, grant funds in hand faster would, benefit our music community as a whole. We've also added criteria for grant consideration, and that is that we are open to receiving creative proposals supporting music programming efforts that can be realized this year. So we're really trying to use our funds at the Presser Foundation to support your immediate and creative programming needs. So please, if you have any questions about this grant making area, don't hesitate to contact me. It is our hope with Next Movement that music organizations across the city will be inspired and learn a few things. And then more importantly, from the Presser Foundation's perspective, know that there is funding available through special projects that can be applied. A very, very special thank you to Flo and to Dominic from Mendelssohn Chorus of Philadelphia and to Brendan from OperaDelaware. Also, a big thanks to our co-presenter, American Composers Forum, Philadelphia chapter, Dustin Hurt specifically. As we've shared, we will make this recording available. I'll be sending around an email shortly with some links to anyone that has registered or anyone on our email distribution list. And then finally, please consider joining us for the next movement taking place next week, August 19th at 11 a.m., where we're going to hear from PYO Music Institute and Wilmington Children's Chorus. And just a note, PYO Music Institute is formerly known as Philadelphia Youth Orchestra. They went through a name change similar to the Mendelssohn Chorus has also gone through a name change. It's a time for a lot of change and creativity and reimagining, as we certainly have all heard today. So thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.